What's going on, guys? It's Goose, the Wise Wealth Discord, back with another Sunday watch list. Just wanted to start with the SPY again. I do have a little explanation on what a cup and handle is. We'll be going over that. I do see one on AMD right now, and semiconductors do have a big week ahead with NVIDIA earnings. That's something to be aware of because, as Jimmy said in the Discord, NVIDIA was a big reason and why this started pushing up and why the market started having a rally from the October lows is because they destroyed earnings and there was a huge a huge craze with AI this year with stocks. So we'll see how that plays out. But as always, I usually start with the SPY. We have the uptrend that was currently broken last week. We did have a falling wedge, and I was pointing out that the pullback, I really did want to see the 440 area be tested. It looks like we broke through it. So as of right now, what I'm seeing is that we could be forming a head and shoulders. Unfortunately, it could be some more downside, but the right shoulder would be around the 445 area if we do get a bounce this week. As you can see, there's a left shoulder right here. Then you would be expecting the next shoulder to be right around here if it can get above that trend line. On Friday, we did have a decent little bounce. We had a gap down, and then it came back up. So it's looking good, like they're trying to find a support, and the bulls are battling back. But nothing's guaranteed in this market. There's a lot of bad news, bad sentiment going on, especially with like overseas, like China, and their collapsing real estate market. Not a lot of good news happening, and it seems like the big old hedgies kind of want the market to go down in a way. So that was a big thing to not, not hold the 440 level. And a lot of people were starting to sell off pretty heavy around that time, but there was a bounce. Like I said, I could see the right shoulder being formed, and somewhere around like the 440, 443 area, I think could be a good spot to maybe start to short again. I keep forgetting that with these videos, it's important for me to explain that I'm not a financial advisor, and any risk you do choose to take are completely on you. And this is not financial advice, just my own opinions. So please don't sue me if you are watching these videos. So the SPY, like I said, the bounce, I could see it maybe going 443. Sometimes there is a big pump leading up to earnings, and NVIDIA's earnings are Wednesday aftermarket. So I could see Monday through Wednesday kind of being, a decent little rally, little bounce off the bottom. As you can see, we're starting to get a little bit close to oversold now. Earlier, when we were getting up to here, Jimmy and I were saying we're very overextended, and as you could see, a pullback was kind of due. And that's kind of the area we're in right now, a pullback to a correction area. Right now, we're at about 5.5% from the highs that we had this year, which isn't too bad. It's pretty orderly selling, nothing too crazy, which you kind of like to see in a healthy bull market, since technically we are in a bull market. So hopefully the bulls start to find a little support and push through. We'll see what happens once it gets to the 443 area. You got big tech coming in over here. This is what's kind of been beat down a lot because of after Apple earnings and stuff. You could start to see it maybe has a little bit of support here. This is the day chart that we're looking at, so it is a long time to have some of these things play out, but there's a little support right here that could be turning into resistance. It could have just been, a little retest of the broken support that was there. So we're really wanting to see is a break above this, hopefully to start to show a little bit. Maybe it can range or something like that. Right now, it doesn't look the best because it's been so beaten down. But as you can see, it's still oversold on the 4-hour RSI and the Qs. So when these oversold levels start to come, usually dip buyers like to buy that up, especially with all the fear that's been happening with overseas. So I'll be keeping an eye on it. I can't predict the future. I don't know what news is going to come out, but I'm leaning a little bit more bullish to the start of the week, just the lead up to NVIDIA earnings, because people, last earnings they had, they gapped up tremendously. They went parabolic, and they just continue to inch up after their earnings. So I could see a little bit of a pump in the start of the week happening. It's not guaranteed with news and stuff. Do have the futures that are open right now. We're up 0.12%, nothing too crazy. I think I added the NASDAQ futures. That's pretty much the QQQs. That's big tech. And that's it right there, that bottom candle. I mean, we got to oversold in the start of the day, and then now you can see there's a bullish engulfing. So it looks like dip buyers are starting to pull themselves together here. They want to have a good support here because of the gap down here. You can see there's a big old gap right here to be filled. So bulls don't want to give that up. Bears are trying to clear that. Let me pull up my rectangle here. Boom. So it had a little bit of a crease in there, but of course bulls stepped in and were like, nope, we're not feeling that right now. So I could see a little support there, and like I showed earlier, there's a little bit of a denial phase right here around the 14,850 area. This is the future, so it's moving right now. We're up 0.25%. That's pretty decent for the bulls. So they are wanting to show out probably Monday through Wednesday. We'll see how that plays out. We got the dollar. It did break out of that little wedge thing that you have. It's you could lift this up a little bit and still show that it's showing a little bit of resistance up there. Like I said, if the dollar starts to come down, that's usually good for tech stocks, especially. It hurts them, and as you can see, July 20th was when the dollar started raising, and if you go up to the SPY, July 20th is about where the top occurred. Is I would say so. July 20th is right here, right around here, and you could see from it being demolished all the way up there, and it bottomed out right about here as it's rising. So we go back to the dollar here. July 20th was here, and as it starts to rise, what's happening to the SPY? The SPY is starting to come down. So it's like an inverse effect that if you watch the dollar and it is rising, it's typically not good for stocks. And from this point on, from right here, as the dollar was falling, the SPY was rising. But now that the dollar is coming up, the SPY started dropping. So it's like you kind of want to watch the dollar just to make sure that it's not going too parabolic. There still is a decent amount of resistance up there. I personally am kind of hoping for it to be denied just so we can continue kind of the bull market. It's a lot easier to trade in a bull market, in my opinion. It's a lot more predictable. You can play breakouts and retests and stuff to that nature. Something to keep an eye on. That's the 4 hour. I don't know if there's anything in the shorter term, like the 15-minute, really to watch for. Kind of got a little bit of consolidation, just chopping sideways and stuff to that nature. Big denial point from that, major resistance that we have. Boom, boom. So we'll see. I'm keeping an eye on it. Could still get denied and then continue its upward trend. We got Apple, another big tech. They finally filled that gap below. As you can see, it went straight through it. It was holding its bear flag that Jimmy called out. It was holding it, and once it lost it, you have a gap. It just completely filled it. So we'll see. It has a decent amount of resistance going on. I do have this other line formed, this bottom green line, because I feel like that's the next, resistance or support, and it broke through, and now it's trying to make its way up. And as you can see, the wick went up there, but it was denied. The bears don't want it to let that become the new support, and then for it to be like a decent retest for it to keep going up. So we'll see. Apple's a big one. It's one of the most heavily weighted stocks in the SPY, so you want to always keep an eye on it, see how that's moving, and then you can kind of portray that in other big tech stocks. UPS, I haven't seen much from them. I've always had this major trend line form there. As you can see, it's just continuing to get beat down, beat down. And I'm starting to see it's starting to get very, very oversold territories, and it's right around the point of support that I have drawn out here on the blue line. I have a second major support. If it gets down here, I most likely would buy calls. I can't trade them because I work for them, but it's been coiling up slowly but surely, and I think it's looking good. It's a pretty good dividend stock, so people like to buy for the long term on UPS. Got Microsoft, another big tech company. They were forming kind of a double top, and it's starting to play out a little bit more. But as you can see, it's oversold. So it's like when these oversold indicators start to come in, that's when you want to start to think about dip buying. And if you're dollar cost averaging, these are points that you want to get in on. They did have a decent little trend line forming, but it was broken, with, I mean, you could still kind of you could still kind of form a little bit of a trend there with that happening, and it would kind of support the thesis of a bounce happening soon, because you see the oversold points. Then if you draw a trend line, it looks like it is pulling back to a good area to start to buy. And as I've mentioned a few times already, the Nvidia earnings are big, and I think that the bulls are going to try and keep pushing it up until those things happen, until the earnings come out, and then maybe it's a sell the news event where they could kill earnings, but it's all about guidance. And their guidance last time was, we're going to continue to grow with AI, and they kept preaching the AI word out there, and the market loved it, and they were just blowing up. So a lot of these stocks are kind of at critical points to where I can see a bounce occurring. It doesn't mean it's guaranteed. You want to continue to watch the news. DraftKings broke out of their uptrend that they had going. They're starting to, they bounced from Friday too after their big gap down, but they still have a big resistance right here, like the 2780 range. I'd like to see it get back up there to see if it can keep inching up. I do like kind of the curvature that they have going on here. Jimmy was preaching like a buyer around here. I forgot what exactly he was doing, but I think it was broken above like $20 that he was looking at, and it continued to shoot up after that. It's a pretty good like buy and hold situation with DraftKings. As you can see, they had their bottom out process around $10, and they haven't looked back since. So if this does continue to break out or get denied from this trend line, then you could see some more down area. But anywhere around $10, I think, is a buy on DraftKings. I don't think it's going to go much below that unless we have some major news. Boeing, they're still kind of hanging in there. They did have a little wedge that was forming that was broken out. As you can see, this candle. This is the day chart. When it got up to that 234 area and denied, it was smoked from that point on. There's a decent support right here at 220, and it got close to it, and then bulls started, picking it up and trying to fight back, because I think, a lot of people are expecting Nvidia earnings to be good because of the last ones they had. Meta's still broken out of their ultimate trend line. That was a big push. I could see it coming up to retest about the 295 area. We'll see. A lot of these things are, tough to play shorts in these areas because you start to see these oversold territories. I mean, most of the stocks that I'm showing you are in this deep red RSI, and you don't usually want to be buying shorts when they're oversold, because that's when dip buyers like to come in and start to buy cheaper assets for the next push up. Netflix, Jimmy had a fantastic call on them. He had a head and shoulders form. So this is the head, and then you have the left and the right shoulder. Once this neckline was broken, it was about the 413 area. It just got smoked for a few days. You could see it a little better on the 15, is where once that neckline right here of support was broken in this consolidation, it came up, retested it like you want to see, and then enter. You enter your shorts, and I don't know if Jimmy ever got in, but he did call it out. It was fantastic play. It played out beautifully. And as it was like right here, I just like, I'm kind of scared to play it. Then it got oversold, but it kept going, and it ended up getting bought up. As you can see, right when it gets to the oversold point, there's a little bit of some dip buyers happening. So I don't know. I'm personally kind of scared to ride in like heavy shorts right now, just because of how overextended we are in the downside with some of these RSIs. Tesla, I changed the view on it. I did have a falling wedge, and there was like a support right around the gap, but it ended up falling through and it continued to go down. But as you can see, their ultimate trend right now is kind of coiling up, and they've had these pullbacks. So right here on this first push from the October lows, they had a pullback from the top there. That was about 25%, and it ended up, bouncing right off that ultimate trend, going back up. And then you have another one right here from the top, came back down. It's close to like 28% drawdown. And Tesla, I mean, for the long term, is a great company. I mean, their profit margins continue to grow, and they're continuing to develop new technology. So I'm hoping for a bounce here from Tesla. As you can see, RSI very oversold again. So these are places where you usually like to find calls, especially if they have solid company behind them, and you have the trend line confirmation. So you're adding in those confluences that there's oversold and they're on their trend line, that's typically places where you want to start buying calls. And as I've been preaching this whole video, Monday through Wednesday, I'm thinking because Nvidia's is Wednesday after hours. I'm thinking leading up to Wednesday, there's going to be a decent bounce from the bulls trying to push it up, and then we'll obviously see where the market wants to go after that. We do have a Jackson Hole event coming up, and that'll be a big catalyst on Friday to see if we can continue from that bounce. And if Nvidia earnings are good, I could see the bulls start to gain a little traction and start to make things happen. Shopify, they're in their gap fill right now. There's a big gap, and once this ascending wedge was broken, you could see it was trying to hold its support, right above the gap, but now it's broken through. And gaps usually like to be filled. The algos don't like to leave those unfilled, whether it's in the up or the downside. Eventually, most gaps are filled. So there's a decent gap right here, and now it's in it. So we'll see if the bulls try and pull themselves out of it, or if it just lets go. There's nothing confirmed nor denied yet. Yeah, Arc, that's a pretty good one for you know. They're all big into like innovation. That's what Kathy Woods tries to preach. They have a decent they have a decent uptrend going on right now. Higher highs, higher lows, higher highs, higher lows. As long as it holds this trend line, I could see a bounce because look again, the RSI very, very oversold. And it's like these are places that you really want to start to exit shorts if you are in them from these points. Then you want to maybe look at calls, especially with the trend line being up. So these are 4 hours, so it's like it's been a while that it's been on a solid uptrend. 15, I don't know if it's pretty much the same thing, just kind of a solid uptrend, a big push up in the upside once it gets to this oversold point and the trend line is there. It's just simple technical analysis here that's not too difficult to understand, that if it's on, the trend is your friend. And if you see up here, it's overextended, it's overbought on the RSI. And this is where Jimmy and I were starting to say maybe possibly think about shorts because a pullback could be happening on the SPY and stuff to that nature. It's just kind of simple. I'm trying to get you guys accustomed to what we're seeing and how we play them. And when you see oversold or overbought and you're seeing trend lines start to get denied, stuff to that nature, that's when you can start to play it based off your analysis. Baba, I had I had the call out and it played out nicely and I got greedy. As you could see, I was calling this out right here on this bounce from the trend line. I really did like it, and it gapped up in the morning because China had news. They're a very communist country, and they had news telling their banks that they couldn't sell Chinese stocks anymore. So that's what ended up with the gap up. But then they had bad news come out. I forgot. Was it third? This was Thursday, so it must have been Friday. Friday when the huge gap down happened. Evergrande, one of their biggest real estate holding companies, ended up filing for chapter something. It was like 13 or something like that, bankruptcy. So that was big. China's kind of like in a really bad spot right now because most of their wealth is held up in real estate, and if their big old real estate companies are coming crashing down, filing for bankruptcy, it's never a good thing. But with them breaking this trend, that's not good. They are oversold on the 1 hour. I believe the 4 hour they're getting oversold too. So we'll see if the Bulls hold on to it. I would be watching for like the $90 level. If they can make it back here, maybe you can play calls. But I got greedy and I was up about like 10% on the position, and it was a pretty big position. So it was like 300-400 bucks. And as you can see, the news smoked it, and I ended up losing like 700 bucks on the position. Tough, but that's just what happens sometimes. You can't predict the news, especially if you're swing trading. And they do have a big old gap down here that the Bulls are trying to defend currently. But right here, you got a gap. So if they lose that, if they get denied from the 90 point and lose that, I mean, you could see 85 to $80, in the near future of Baba. Just got to be careful the news. Nvidia, this is the one that has big earnings. They've been kind of coiling up a little bit. I like this little, downwards pressure here. But if it's breaking above, I mean, it's gone. I mean, 500, here we come with Nvidia. So hasn't been stopped. The AI craze has been crazy. I mean, as you can see from this bottom, they were nearing $100, and now they're at 400, 4 times your investment, and literally like 6 months of time. Probably a little longer than 6 months, probably about a year. But I'm watching them. They're holding this decent trend right now. Some consolidation, some selling happening, but nothing too crazy. AMD, this is where I wanted to preach the cup and handle. Looks gorgeous. You got the cup right here and then the handle forming. They started getting down here to this bottom trend line, and that's where dip buyers started to come in and start to buy it up a little bit. Never quite reached the super oversold level, but it was an important trend to hold, and it looks like they were trying to hold it. Cup and handle, I pulled it up on Google. It's just a simple rounded bottom with consolidated selling. It kind of almost looks like how Nvidia was selling off. Is like it's like a little bit of a downwards pressure. But AMD is forming a beautiful cup and handle, and I do like to see those things from a bullish perspective. Is there's the cup, there's the rounded bottom, and here's the handle. And it's like if this is broken up in the upside, it could be a really big thing. As you can see, it breaks out of the handle and it continues to go up. There's inverse cup and handles, as you can see on this one, where it does that. It's a rounded top, and then it does the handle, boom, drop down, see you later. So right now, AMD does look very bullish in my opinion, and AMD is um, what's it called? A semiconductor stock, and that'll be affected greatly by Nvidia earnings. Those are going to be huge. It's a huge catalyst because this is part of the reason why the market was pumping up so high when June, July, and stuff like that. I can't remember. It could have been going up. It probably was. In why am I drawing a blank? March in April. April it was still pushing up, so we'll see a little bit of consolidated selling off. Nvidia, AMD has the cup handle, so it's looking good. It's all just rides on Nvidia earnings. If those can continue to go up, then I can see the market having a short-term bounce, especially leading up to earnings. They like to pump the stock in anticipation that it's going to be good earnings. Anything can happen when earnings comes out, though. Is like I am leaning a little bit bullish in the start of the week, but when Nvidia earnings comes out Wednesday aftermarket, it completely flipped the script. And then we have Jackson Hole coming up Friday, so that'll be pretty big. Um, I could look up economic calendar. I don't think there's anything too big coming out. Let's see, what does Bloomberg got for us? Let's do U.S. This is Sunday, Monday. We got 3 months bill auction Tuesday. FOMC speaker Barkin speaks. Red Book year over year. I don't know exactly what that is. Existing home sales. That's a pretty big one. This is Tuesday, August 22nd. Got a lot of home things. Another Fed speaker coming out Wednesday. What do we got? NBA, 30-year mortgage index, building permits. As you can see, these three things are indicators to how much it affects the market. So building permits will be a big one. We got services. We got PMI. It'll be big. Crude oil imports. Energy's been kind of on a tear lately, so that'll be something to watch Thursday. Core durable goods month over month. That'll be big. Initial jobless claims. That's always a big one because the Fed is trying to bring the jobs down a little bit. So nothing too crazy from that perspective. But we do have Jackson. I think it shows actually down here. I didn't get down to Friday. Friday, Fed Chair Powell speaks. 10:05. So it'll be earlier in the morning. That's the Jackson Hole that we're waiting for on Friday. That'll be huge. But yeah, nothing too crazy. I am leaning a little bit more towards the bullish side in the start of the week, but we'll see how it plays out. Hopefully, AMD can play out the cup and handle pattern, and then I could show you guys in the next video how exactly that